Hello, and welcome to Hard Conversations. This is a podcast about male sexuality, intimacy, and sex positivity, where we unpack the taboo topic of erectile issues in a safe, non-judgmental space. And now, here's your host, sex therapist, Timothy Norton.
Hello and welcome to Hard Conversations. Really excited about my next guest today, Alan Gordon, who is a psychotherapist in Los Angeles, California, specializing in treatment of chronic pain. Alan is an assistant adjunct professor at the University of Southern California.
You know what? I don't believe it. You're not selling it.
I'm not. Okay, a little more enthusiasm?
Yeah.
All right. Is an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California.
There you go.
Has authored publications on the treatment of chronic pain and has presented on the topic of pain treatment at conferences and trainings throughout the country. He served as the chair for the 2013 Mind-Body Conference at USC and co-created the treatment outline and training protocol for the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association. Hi, Alan, and welcome to Hard Conversations.
Hi, Tim.
It doesn't say you were on the doctors in your
I know
bio.
It's an old bio. We haven't changed the website in maybe like 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other things you wanted to just brag about while talking about your intro and your bio?
We just did a really big. It's all pain related stuff, which isn't necessarily linked to what we're going to be talking about. So
okay,
lots of good pain stuff.
Lots of good pain stuff.
Yeah.
Well. And we are going to talk a little bit about pain because pain is your paradigm, but I feel like your paradigm gives you a really cool insight into treating erectile issues. When I texted you about this, you had a great answer. You said the treatment for ED is similar to the treatment for TMS, for psychogenic pain. It's the fear and preoccupation around the symptom that perpetuates it. Outcome independence reduces the level of preoccupation.
It's true. That's a good text.
That's a good text. And that could be the whole interview, right? That kind of sums it up. But why don't we break some of that down? Well, why don't we give a little bit more background for that? So this place, the Pain Psychology Center, where I work, how do you answer the question, what is it that you guys do there?
We treat chronic pain. Studies have shown that the majority of chronic pain is actually caused by neural pathways in the brain, not structural problems in the body. And so, people have chronic pain. You have chronic back pain, chronic neck pain, chronic pelvic pain. And obviously the initial belief is like, oh, there's something wrong with my body, and that could be reinforced by doctors or physical therapists. But more often than not, they find that many forms of chronic pain are actually caused by the brain misinterpreting safe messages from the body as if they're dangerous. So what we do is we essentially help to rewire the brain to accurately interpret those messages, which deactivates the pain signal.
Okay, and I think the way that I started to think about you as a guest for this show is it's more than just back pain that ends up getting treated at your center.
Right.
Can you give us an idea of the array of symptoms that get treated there?
If it exists, we've treated it. I mean, mouth pain, tongue pain, eye pain, stomach pain, back pain, neck pain, foot pain. The brain is capable of generating any physical sensation in any part of the body. So there isn't something that can exist that the brain cannot create. That isn't to say that all pains or even all chronic pains are created by the brain, but they can be. Okay.
And obviously, you've seen these symptoms reduce or get eliminated,
right,
in all of these parts of the body. And at some point, I attend Alan's case consultations and lectures, and at some point, you did talk about erectile dysfunction as the kind of symptom that is along the lines of other things that you treat, and you've treated it. It's come up in sessions. And so, tell me more about that.
Well, I think that first off, like pain is a danger signal, right? If you think about pain, it's a danger signal. If you put your hand on a hot stove, the pain is letting you know you got to move your hand so you don't cause additional damage. But sometimes these danger signals can get activated, and even in the absence of like an injury or structural damage or something. So the brain is actually interpreting danger where there is none. And I think it's really similar with erectile dysfunction. You actually asked me before the interview if I had any metaphors, and so I was brainstorming. And you grew up in Los Angeles, so you may remember this. Back in 1983, do you remember Steve Sachs on the Dodgers?
Of course.
So Steve Sachs was like this rookie phenom in 1983. He won Rookie of the Year. You know, he had this like amazing, promising future. And it was in his second year, he played second base, and there was a ground ball hit to him, and he threw it like 10 feet over the first baseman's head. It's kind of like a silly error. People in the crowd, like, you know, were laughing or whatever, but it got in his head a little bit. So then the next game, someone hit a ground ball, and it was like a two-hopper to first base, and it got even more in his head, and it became this thing where every time there was a ground ball hit to him, you know, sometimes it would, you know, be in the dirt. Sometimes he would literally throw it like 20 feet over the first baseman's head and it would fly into the stands. And it became this whole thing. Like at away games, people in the stands would like start wearing helmets as like a way to just like mock him, you know? And he made like 50 errors or something before the All-Star break. And so that's how it happens, where at one point playing second base was fun. You know, he was confident. There was a ground ball hit to him and it was great. But then one time it didn't go well. And he started feeling all of this anxiety around it. And he started putting all of his pressure on himself around it. And obviously, you know, fielding a ground ball and throwing it to first base, it's like you need to be loose. You need to be relaxed. And so when he was so tight, when he was feeling so much pressure, it injected him into a fight or flight state. He wasn't able to perform, so to speak, and he kept messing up. And that's exactly what it is with erectile dysfunction, where, you know, for a lot of people, it was like, it wasn't always like that, but they have one incident where it doesn't go as they had hoped or as they planned. They felt really bad about it. They started feeling nervous about the future. They started putting pressure on themselves. And now it's this thing where they're in this fight or flight state, right? Like you need to be in kind of like an easy, relaxed state to get an erection or maintain an erection. But because they were in this fight or flight state, their sympathetic nervous system was activated. They're putting so much pressure on themselves and they're not able to do it. Well, now it's like twice that's happened now. Is this going to become a thing? I've read about it. Oh my God, am I have to spend the rest of my life on Viagra? Am I going to have to like start telling partners about this in advance? They get in their head and it really becomes an issue. And so it's this kind of like positive feedback loop where it happens. You feel terrible, nervous, freaked out. That, you know, compromises your ability to successfully perform in the future. Is that a good metaphor? You like that?
That's a great metaphor. And I wish the end of that story was Steve Sachs came to the Pain Psychology Center and the problem went away and he won the World Series with the Dodgers. But
well, you know what actually happened is it was one of the first times this has ever happened, because it's happened since then for baseball players. But they named it Steve Sachs syndrome because it was like such a big deal. And it's happened, you know, with people in sports at different levels, and almost no one is able to overcome it. Like it's the end of their career because it's just this downward spiral. But Steve Sachs was able to overcome it. And he went on to be a great player and like won the World Series in 1988. He actually went to visit his dad, and he was telling his dad all this stuff that was going on. And his dad just kind of gave him a talk and was like, you're putting so much pressure on yourself. Like, what's the big deal? And it was like his ability to just kind of take the pressure off and relax into it. And you're just kind of like, the worst case scenario was like, you know, I do something else, or I learned how to play first base or something. He took the pressure off. It took him out of a state of fight or flight. and he was able to do it again. And I think it's the same lesson. You know, if you could lower the stakes, if you could just start having fun with it again, that's the thing that could actually pull you out of a fight or flight state and allow you to overcome the issue.
I love the end of that story because he's, you know, that's so psychodynamic. He's channeling his inner paternal object, right? His inner dad, who's telling him everything's gonna be okay, son.
Yeah.
And that comes out in some of your methods, doesn't it? A little bit.
I'm actually thinking back now and what his dad, he kind of looked at his dad. He like pedestalized him so much. He's like, this was, you know, a guy who had like a mind of steel and was so internally and externally strong. And I think what his dad actually said to him is, oh, I went through something like that when I played ball also. And he was like, oh, like this isn't the worst thing in the world. If my dad could go through it, like this is fine, you know? So I think it allowed him to put less pressure on himself.
And that's really the name of the game, isn't it?
And, you know, it's very similar with someone who has pain. Is there's so much fear around it. There's so much anxiety. There's so much pressure to get out of the pain. And it reinforces to your brain that pain is dangerous. So it's really about, you know, taking yourself out of this place of interpreting things as dangerous and into a place where you're able to interpret things as safe. Because, you know, like we were talking about earlier, there's the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, right? The sympathetic nervous system is, you know, when you're in a state of high alert. If you think of like a zebra in a jungle surrounded by lions, like you're in a state of high alert because you need to be able to like run at like first notice. Parasympathetic nervous system is when you're safe, when you're relaxed, when you're out of danger. I feel like whenever I'm talking about that, there's like a siren or motorcycle in the background, just sub-communicating the opposite of what I'm saying. But, you know, and that's when you're able to like go to sleep and relax. And you need to be in a parasympathetic state to like get an erection, to maintain an erection. So the irony is the anxiety and the fear and the preoccupation and the pressure around getting an erection and maintaining an erection is the very thing that brings you out of that sympathetic state. Out of that parasympathetic state that you need to get it in the first place. It's like a catch-22.
So what do we do?
What do you think?
So, you know, I've worked with you guys for some time now, and the approach lately, and the approach for a significant period of time that's been really effective that you guys are applying in your study and everything has to do with tracking, with approaching this pain and tracking pains, various pains. And I'm wondering if, you know, giving that attention to a non-erect penis and tracking it and trying to eliminate the fear of the symptom would also probably be effective.
I don't think it would work.
You don't think so?
No, I think that it would just lead to even more pressure and hypervigilance around it for something like that.
Okay.
Can we role play?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You be someone who is like has ED and is freaked out about it, and you know, however it manifests. Maybe you're not able to get an erection. Maybe it's premature ejaculation.
Okay. No. So, yeah. So, for the last 3 months, like 3 months ago, I was on vacation with my girlfriend. We were in San Francisco, and we got a really nice hotel. It was a Friday night, and everything was great. And it came to time to have sex, and nothing. And ever since then, like at best, I'll have an erection, I'll run into the bedroom and try to have sex with it, and I'll lose it. And I just can't. I can masturbate fine.
Yeah.
Urologist.
You're able to get an erection when you masturbate, and you're okay.
Yeah. And I went to a urologist. He said everything's okay. Testosterone levels are fine. I even got an erection during the exam. It was kind of embarrassing, and everything.
You're really owning this role play.
I've never actually heard somebody say that, yeah. And so what do I do, Alan?
You know something funny? Steve Sachs was able to make the throw to first base every time during practice, right? So you're able to get the erection when you masturbate, right? Because there's no pressure, because the stakes are low. But as soon as you're in the game, there's so much pressure. And it sounds like having sex isn't really fun anymore. It's like you're trying to do it successfully to overcome this problem, to beat this thing. It's like a job. It's like a chore. You know, when I was in high school, I read the book Catch-22 because I had to for school. You need to read 3 chapters a week. You know, you need to like write a paragraph on character development. And I hated it because of the situation that I was in. Like, forced to read it, you know, needed to kind of gather all of this data. And then I read it when I was like 25, and I was like, this is the best book I've ever read.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And the reason why is because the first time it was a chore, it was a job, it was a responsibility. But the second time, it was fun. I could do it at my own pace. It was enjoyable. And I think that, you know, what you're telling me is that, you know, sex, a thing that used to be fun, I'm assuming, is no longer fun. Now it's like a test. You're taking a test. And if you pass, you're going to feel okay about yourself. And if you fail, you're going to feel awful about yourself. And the irony is that makes it almost impossible to pass, because the pressure around taking a test is literally going to pull you out of the state that you need to be in when you have sex. You know, no one, I don't care, you know, who you are, no one would be able to get an erection under gunpoint, literally. You know, like, it would be impossible if someone's holding a gun to your head to get an erection, because you're not in the right, your nervous system is not capable of it. So if you think about the pressure that you feel to need to get an erection in those moments, it's like you're holding yourself at gunpoint. So we just need to lower the stakes. What was going on? You know, do you have any ideas or theories why you didn't get the erection the first time? I feel like people are going to be joining at this point in the podcast, and they're not going to realize this is a role play. They're like, "Wow, Tim's really making himself vulnerable."
Yeah. So the question again is, do I remember what was going on?
Yeah.
At the time?
Why do you think you may have not gotten an erection that first night in San Francisco on vacation in the really nice hotel?
You know, I have no idea. We decided to drive. It was a long drive. Mm-hmm. They had the wrong room for us, and we had to wait, and we actually had to kind of yell at the manager, and then like we were hungry, and we went out to eat, and then like just ended up at this restaurant that was really expensive, and like the food was kind of shit. And got home, and it just had been an awful day, but she had gotten new lingerie for the night, and we even had like just some sex toys, and it was a big night because we hadn't been having much sex, and it was like this vacation. It was kind of all like, okay, this is going to be our weekend.
You guys really planned for it.
We did.
But it sounds like the day was so heavy and stressful and frustrating that it's like, you weren't really in that parasympathetic state that we were talking about. You weren't really in that relaxed state where you were able to, which is fine. That happens. And so it makes sense that I understand why you weren't able to have sex that first night. But the next time you tried having sex, you know, it probably wasn't as awful of a day. But the new fear, the new preoccupation was, am I going to be able to have sex? So it started because you were in this state of anxiety and preoccupation about other stuff. But then after it happened one time, it was like the sex itself became the new stressor. So you didn't even need to be stressed out about anything else. So this is kind of like the cycle. You know, for pain, we call it the pain-fear cycle. I think that, you know, for the sake of this condition, it would be like the erection fear cycle. where it's like, you weren't able to get an erection the first time because you were in a state of anxiety about something else, but then it was the fear of not being able to get an erection itself that prevented you from being able to get an erection. Then the second time you weren't able to have sex, I'm sure now you're like, oh my God, once it was a fluke. Now this is like a thing.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And now I think about it at work. I think about it, all day long when she's nowhere near me, where there's no sign of sex anywhere, and get totally worked up about it. To the point where, I feel like I need to drink more, or I've looked at like getting anxiety medication. And it's kind of maddening.
There's like a desperation to it.
Yeah.
And is she feeling a sense of powerlessness over it? Is she feeling bad about it?
Does
she not really, is she like, well, we're going to work this out together? How's she feeling about it?
Well, the first couple times she was like that. She was like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when I get really anxious about it, like she's starting to get impatient. Like she just wants me to handle it.
It almost doesn't even sound like she's like mad at you for not satisfying her. It's almost like now there's just so much anxiety about having sex. She's like, let's figure this out. Like it's time to get past this. It sounds like sex isn't fun for either of you guys anymore.
That's true.
Well, we talked about how being in the state of anxiety, having this fear, having this preoccupation is the thing that can bring you out of that parasympathetic state that you need to be. And, because you're in a state of anxiety, she's in a state of anxiety. And has it become like a central thing in your guys' relationship? Has it hurt your relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel I'm scared she wants to leave me. We fight, we bicker. Yeah.
And it kind of seems like, the anxiety around this or the stress around this is like spilling over into like different areas of your relationship.
Yeah.
Do you feel like she's on your team? Like, do you feel like if you had a solution or a new approach that she would be like in to try it with you? Or do you feel like she's just so frustrated with you at this point? She's like, you just figure it out, or do you feel like there's like some support from her?
I feel like if I handled it better and I presented it to her, that, she would be a team player.
You do?
I do.
So if we had her here and I explained to her the whole erection fear cycle, it happened that first time, it got in his head, the more pressure he puts on himself, the harder it is for him to get an erection, the more pressure he puts on himself. And now, it's this thing where he's not able to be in the right state. And she understood that. Then you think that, if we put together like a plan or something like that, that she would be on board. She'd be like, okay, we're a team. We're going to address this.
Yes.
Okay. That's important, because if she was like putting extra pressure on you and not willing to work with you through it, well, how are you not supposed to feel pressure if someone else is putting pressure on you, But if we had her here, and we were able to kind of talk about it together. Okay, this is what's going on with the primitive part of, Tim's brain is blah, blah, blah. This is happening to his autonomic nervous system. I have a plan. Here's what I want you guys to do. She would be like, all right, let's try this thing. Great. So here's the plan.
Okay.
All right.
I'm taking notes.
All right. So what we want you to do is just make sex fun again. It doesn't even matter if you get an erection. You have so much outcome dependence around whether or not you get an erection. Outcome independence is one of the most important components of overcoming erectile dysfunction. My favorite example of outcome independence is, have you ever seen the movie Dead Poet Society?
I have.
So there's this scene where there's this kid and he has this huge crush on a girl from a school across town, but he's always too scared to ask her out. So one time he just like goes to a party across town to ask her out, and he comes back and his friends see him walking back, and he has a big smile on his face and he has a black eye. And they're like, what happened? And he's like, I asked her out. And they're like, and she said yes. And he's like, no, she said no. And her boyfriend punched me in the face. And they said, well, why are you so happy? And he said, because I asked. Right? That's outcome independence, where you no longer define success as whether or not you were able to achieve the outcome, but you define it as your attitude around it.
Independent.
Outcome independence, right? So that's where that term comes from. So I think that for you, you're very outcome dependent right now. If you're able to get an erection, you pass the test, you get an A. If you don't get an erection, you fail the test, you get an F, right? We want you to really work on outcome independence and start looking at the definition of success as, was I able to enjoy myself? Was I able to enjoy the experience independent of the outcome? So the goal is for you and your girlfriend to engage in sexual activity and really just enjoy it. Be light about it. Reconnect with each other. Reconnect with each other's bodies, and if you're able to be in that state of joy, it doesn't matter if you're able to get an erection or not. That's a win, right? You've developed an association where sex is now dangerous. We want to create a new association where sex is fun, is safe, is exciting. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. What I'm worried about, though, is that I'll just be too nervous going into the bedroom. Like, is there anything I can do to just settle my nerves? Like, all I'm thinking about is my penis isn't hard and it's never going to get hard. And then she's going to be upset. She's going to give me a look. I'm going to get scared. Like, it's just a lot.
Well, it sounds like you've really kind of developed an association with even any kind of sexual activity is just like, the first thing we want to do is just kind of like take it off the table. The first time you guys do this, you're not going to get an erection. That's not even an option. That's not something that's going to be on the table. That's not the goal. The goal is for you guys to have fun. And you know what? If you've developed this association where you're like super nervous to even go in the bedroom, take it somewhere else. Get a hotel. Go to her place. Hang out in the living room. We want to kind of create an environment where we're not adding more obstacles or barriers than there needs to be. And I could give you techniques for anxiety regulation and things like that. But, the point is, you need to get back to just, lowering the stakes and enjoying being with her in a sexual way, knowing that that's off the table right now in the early stages. If we're able to get back to just enjoying ourselves, eventually, your body will be able to be in a parasympathetic situation while engaging with her in the sexual way, and it will follow.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions about that?
No, I think that was really helpful. I'll let you know how that goes.
There was, I think that this is really a great analogy. I had a friend who got a rescue dog, right? This dog that was treated really poorly the first couple of years of its life, Rocky the rescue dog. And so my friend got this rescue dog, and, because it was treated so poorly by its previous owners, it had developed a specific association. People equals dangerous, right? So every time any one of us would come over, we ring the doorbell, we knock on the door, dog sprints behind the couch. It's terrified. But of course, every time we came over, we would treat the dog really nicely. So after a week or two, knock on the door, dog's still behind the couch, but he's like poking his head out. A couple weeks after that, dog's like halfway between the couch and the door. A couple weeks after that, you knock on the door, the dog is like pawing at the door. He can't wait to get to you. After enough corrective experiences, the dog developed a new association. People equals safe. That's what we want to do with you in that situation. Is we want to create a new association where sex, your girlfriend in general, sexual activity is safe. And we want to help you get some corrective experiences by just enjoying the experience of being with her in a sexual way and just taking sex off the table, reconnecting with the joy, getting some of those corrective experiences so we could teach that rescue dog in your brain a new association.
I like that. And kind of where I'm at right now is Are
we still in the role play?
still in the role play.
Or are we?
Or are we? Sometimes my girlfriend, my real life non-role play girlfriend listens to every episode.
Oh, does she?
Yeah. Hi. And so, yeah, that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
So no. In my role play with this, like in the dog situation, I don't even want to call my girlfriend. I'm avoiding hanging out with her lately.
The association has grown. It started with, and this happens for a lot of people who have pain also, right? Like maybe you have back pain. You have back pain every time you walk, but then it spreads and you have back pain every time you stand. And then you have back pain every time you sit. And now you even have back pain when you're lying down. So a lot of times these associations spread. So I think at first the association was sex equals dangerous. But then it spread. It's like a contagious. And then it was like, my girlfriend equals dangerous. And now it's spread even beyond that, where even thoughts about your girlfriend are dangerous. And it's like there's probably a part of you that wants her to break up with you just so you could be free of all that danger. But so that's what we want to do. We want to start creating new associations, right? So when you find your mind going to a fear about it, right? Just kind of like check in, bring your attention to the physical sensation of anxiety that comes up. Let your brain know it's okay. You're safe right now. We're going to take care of this.
What would a physical sensation of anxiety be?
Good question.
Thanks.
I'm taking too much for granted, these listeners. So let's say you're in the middle of work and you know you're hanging out with your girlfriend that night. You guys are going to dinner and you're like, oh, we're probably going to have sex later, right? And all of a sudden you feel this like feeling of tightness in your chest or your stomach or your throat or something like that. And your mind goes to, okay, let's see, dinner is going to end at this time. Maybe if we order enough alcohol, she'll pass out and she won't, you start kind of going through all these things to kind of regulate your anxiety. So that's a moment where it's like, this is an opportunity to start promoting messages of safety instead of danger to your own brain, right? So, you have that thought, oh, great, we're going to dinner. I'm probably going to, we're going to have sex afterward. I'm going to feel bad about myself. She's going to be disappointed in me. Right then is an opportunity. That is a moment. Check in. See if you could identify where you're feeling anxiety in your body. Is it in your chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your throat? And let's say that, for instance, there's a feeling of tightness in your chest. All you need to do is just bring your attention to that physical sensation of anxiety. This is that tracking thing that you were talking about earlier, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So just lean into the anxiety, bring your attention to it, and just breathe into it for a second, right? So now instead of, running away from the sensation to all of these terrifying thoughts, you're leaning into it, right? So that's a way of kind of trying to create a new association with the feared thoughts around it. But that's what we want to do. We want to start creating new associations, first with, the feared thoughts around it, then just with your girlfriend in general, then with like sex with your girlfriend.
Okay. So I'm visualizing all these things or having all these thoughts and noticing the sensations in my body.
Right.
And then am I literally trying to make the chest pain go away?
Good question. Remember, this chest pain, this anxiety is just another thing that, it's a physical sensation in your body. And we want to teach your brain that all of these physical sensations are safe as opposed to dangerous. Like that's the paradigm with everything. Our goal is to teach our brain that something that it's learned to interpret as dangerous is actually safe, right? Whether it's the prospect of getting an erection, whether you're a rescue dog living with a new family, or whether you're sitting at work and a feeling of anxiety comes up. We want to promote messages of safety. So if there's a feeling in your chest of anxiety, if you want to get rid of it, if you try to get away from it, you're just reinforcing to your brain that it's dangerous. Why would you want to get rid of something that's safe? So instead of trying to get rid of it or change it in any way, all you need to do is lean into it, explore it. So even right now, see if you could just bring your attention to the physical sensations in your body.
Okay.
All right. And what are you aware of feeling right now in this moment, in your stomach or your chest or your throat? Is there any tightness? Is there any warmth? Is there any tingling or burning feelings?
Yeah, there's in the front of my chest, like in the middle of my chest plate, there's like an ache.
Good. That's great. So even just the fact that you're able to identify it is fantastic, because oftentimes people are feeling anxiety and they're so distracted that it's beneath the radar. They're not even connected with it. Mm-hmm. So just the fact that you're even aware of it, and this is real, not role play, right?
I do have a little bit.
Okay,
of
good.
there, yeah.
That's good, because we all have physical
Yeah,
sensations
yeah.
at different times. So I want you to see if you could just bring your attention to that achy feeling. And sometimes it could be like a little challenging to attend to something that is kind of unpleasant or, a little sharp, but that's okay as long as you can tolerate it. See if you could just bring your attention to that physical sensation. We don't even need to label it, right? Maybe it's pain, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's an emotion, but let's just call it a physical sensation that's a little achy. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do is just describe it for me, right? Like, is it widespread or is it localized?
It's localized.
Good. And is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? Is it slightly unpleasant? How would you describe it?
It's slightly unpleasant.
Great. So again, even just the fact that you're able to identify it, you're really paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. So how would you describe the quality of it? Is it a tightness? Is it a stabby feeling? Is it a sharp sensation? Is it tingly, fluttery? What do you think?
It's vague. It's mild. It's like it's a dull pain.
Okay. So it's dull.
It's dull.
Is it tight? Think about it. Just bring your attention to it for even like 5 or 10 seconds and just kind of explore it. You don't need to jump to any assessments. Really just kind of like give yourself the time to attend to it and assess like, what is this sensation? What's the quality of this sensation?
Well, it's kind of disappearing.
Right. So bring your attention to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
let's just call it a dull ache.
Okay.
All right. So it's this localized, slightly unpleasant dull ache. Mm-hmm. And I want you to lean into it. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to get rid of it. You don't need to change it in any way. All you're doing is attending to this sensation and just watching it. If you've ever been like scuba diving or snorkeling and you see a really interesting looking fish, you're not doing anything to it. You're not chasing after it. You're just watching it, noticing it, exploring how the patterns on its body and the way that it swims. It's the same thing. You're just paying attention to the slightly unpleasant, localized, dull, achy sensation. We know it isn't dangerous. It's just a sensation. And see if you could just watch what happens to it. Really kind of like explore it. Does it expand? Does it contract? Does it intensify? Does it subside? Does it change in quality? How would you describe it? What do you notice happening?
That sometimes on an exhale, it's like it sinks down and disappears. And then it's gone for like 2 breaths. And then on an inhale, it kind of comes back.
Great. So this is an awesome opportunity to practice outcome independence. We don't want to be excited when it's gone and bummed when it's back. We want you to be okay either way, and really just kind of like marvel at the fact that your brain is powerful enough to like actually cause these, ebbing and flowing sensations in your body, and see if you could just watch it. And you don't need to change it. And again, you're not necessarily watching it with any intensity or scrutiny, almost kind of like if you're like lying back in a field watching clouds pass by overhead or a beautiful sunset. You're just kind of watching it in this like easy, effortless kind of way, knowing that whatever happens to it is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just ebbing and flowing. It's like if you ever, I don't know, been to a symphony or something like that, and it's like sometimes the violins come in and the tempo increases, and then the tubas come along and like it slows down. Are there tubas in a symphony?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to research my
Sometimes.
analogies more.
Yeah.
So see if you can just like lean into it and enjoy it. Just enjoy the show.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's safe. And if it intensifies, that's okay. If it flutters, that's fine. And what do you notice happening?
It was really absent for the majority of when you were talking. And then right when you started to finish, it kind of flared up again.
Cool. And is it still there? Is it still unpleasant?
Yeah.
Good.
Barely, but yeah.
Great. So yeah, just the fact that you're able to pay attention to it, this physical sensation that came up in your chest, without trying to run away from it, without trying to get rid of it, you were literally communicating to your brain, this physical sensation that my brain has been interpreting as dangerous is actually safe. That's what we want to do. We want to teach your brain to reinterpret something that it's looking at as dangerous as if it's safe. That makes sense?
It does.
Do you know about that Lorimer-Moseley study with sadomasochists?
Remind me.
So Lorimer-Moseley did a study with like sadomasochists, like people who, go to dominatrices.
Yeah, dominatrices.
Dominatrices. You knew that a little too quickly.
This is a show that's all about sexuality. We actually almost had a dominatrix.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we've had a couple porn stars.
Oh, wow.
A sex surrogate. So yeah, BDSM comes up.
All right.
It does.
Okay.
It does, yeah.
Well, there's an explanation for that. Okay. So anyway, he did this study with, sadomasochists, and it was this really fascinating thing where they put like a really hot probe on their leg. And they were taking an fMRI of their brain, kind of scanning the activity of their brain. And they were all listening to a recording. And the scientist was talking. And he was just narrating what was happening. There's a hot probe on your leg. It's this many degrees. This is the chemical reaction that's happening on your skin. And the person was processing it as pain, which is what you would expect. Now, everything stays exactly the same, except the recording changes, and it's no longer the scientist talking anymore. It's a dominatrix. She's actually following the exact same script. This is what's happening on your leg. This is how it feels. This is what's happening on your skin. And the subject went from processing it as painful to processing it as pleasure, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So nothing changes except the interpretation, right? So when there's a physical sensation of anxiety in your body, you don't need to get rid of it because there's nothing to get rid of. It's just your brain interpreting these little bits of sensory input as dangerous and as being processed as unpleasant. But by leaning into it, by tracking it, by exploring it in that kind of like objective, mindful, curious way, by reminding your brain that it's safe, by enjoying the experience, you're developing new neural pathways to interpret that sensation as safe.
Okay. So now I'm doing that just when I'm trying to lower my anxiety. Yes. Would I also do that with my non-erect penis?
I don't know why that was such a funny question in that moment. You know what's so funny is I've talked about this so many times, somatic tracking, reinforcing to the brain that it's safe. And for a sec, I forgot that I was on a podcast about erectile dysfunction. So all of a sudden saying, would I do that with a non-erect penis? Felt totally out of the blue, though it isn't. That was amazing.
I've never gotten that question before.
Yeah. Not at that point in the explanation.
Okay.
I think that
your gut's telling you no.
My gut is telling me no. And the reason why is because I don't think you're going to feel the anxiety in your penis. I think you're going to feel your anxiety in different parts of your body, And I think it would be hard to pay attention to your penis and be outcome independent. I think it would be hard to be like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? You'd be like annoyed or frustrated that it was in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that task of otherwise lowering the anxiety symptoms in every other part of your body is pretty important.
Well, it sets the stage for being in a parasympathetic state. You know, like when you're able to regulate your anxiety, then your body, you know, this is what insomnia is. It's people being unable to get into a parasympathetic state because they're in such a state of anxiety throughout the day. So it's kind of globally important. But generally speaking,
that was a really big statement.
Oh, what's that?
That's what insomnia is?
That's what insomnia is.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you start your insomnia podcast, we'll have the same conversation with a different application.
Right. No, I've broken it down as such before too. Like it's hard to imagine someone getting out of that sympathetic state when it's just been so long. Your body doesn't quite shut down that quickly.
Yeah.
Zebras' bodies do.
Yes.
But we don't.
Yeah, it's complicated. But just to kind of give some context to the different things we've talked about, the anxiety that you carry all throughout the day, you know, is going to just like prime you to be in that state of, you know, your sympathetic nervous system being activated, you being in that kind of like high alert state. And so being able to kind of practice regulating your anxiety throughout the day it's going to help you lower the stakes. It's going to make it easier for your body to be in that parasympathetic state necessary in order to get the erection. So I know we've been talking about different parts of this, and I don't want any of the listeners to be confused as like, do I do the somatic tracking thing? Do I like enjoy the sex? Like these are all different parts of it. You know, you want to lower the stakes in general. You want to promote messages of safety to your brain. You want to kind of teach your brain that these anxious sensations that it's interpreting as dangerous are actually safe. You want to, you know, reconnect with your girlfriend or boyfriend and get them on board and try to create some new associations where it's enjoyable and light and easy and effortless again.
That's really eloquent and succinct. I like that. And it actually corroborates, did I say that word right?
That was perfect.
An earlier guest who we weren't role-playing, who was telling an actual story that had happened to him, and he was talking about his issues with erectile issues in the
When
past.
you said an earlier guest, you said that like they do on talk shows when someone's about to come out and like join.
And here he is.
And I was like, wait, but we're in my place. How is this going to happen?
He's not here. And his solution was he developed an intense meditation practice, like over an hour to 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
And just really, I mean, obviously kicked up that parasympathetic nerve state tremendously.
That feels a little intense to me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've actually, you know, worked with like meditation experts and gurus before who meditated way more than me, but, you know, they still had pain. And it was almost kind of like they were meditating with a sense of intensity, you know, because meditation is all about just being easy and effortless and enjoying the moment. And sometimes even like, you know, you could take up something like meditation, but do it with an energy that's intense and not to kind of, you know, whoever that previous guest was, it sounds like it worked for them. But I think a lot of people, they feel like they need to work so hard to overcome this problem. And the irony is all that extra work is just more pressure, you know, and more intensity and more tension, which contributes to the very problem in the first place. Was that earlier guest you?
No. Okay. No. The way you described that story, I actually have been talking to somebody recently who heard another story that you had told in another place, I don't know where you talked about your dedication to symptom reduction and how you kind of took it, where you were doing like all the things.
Yes.
So you have a little experience.
I remember, because I kind of have that personality where it's like I have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on myself. And I remember when I was in grad school, I used to highlight like 3/4 of every page. And I remember one of my friends was like, you know, it'd actually be more efficient to highlight the stuff you thought wasn't important.
Right.
And I remember when I had really bad pain, I at one point I had really bad head pain, and I knew all the things I was supposed to do. I was attending to my internal state. I was doing the somatic tracking. I was paying attention to my emotions. I was, meditating. This is on a Sunday, and I spent 11 straight hours doing all these things that you're supposed to do. And at the end of that 11-hour stretch, I was in even more pain. And instantly I was just like, I'm never going to beat this. I don't care. I'm done trying. I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. I'm just like surrendering. And the weirdest thing, within 5 minutes, it was 50% better. And I was like, oh, on the surface, I was doing all of the right things. But when you're doing anything with an energy of pressure and intensity, it can turn a tool into a weapon. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant to be like, yes, an hour of meditation a day will solve this problem. 2 hours will. It's less about the behavior and more about the energy beneath that behavior.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we covered a lot.
Has that been an hour?
It's been 50 minutes.
Wow, time was really flew. That was really fun.
Yeah, good. So any other tips that you'd like to give to all the guys out there about their non-erect penises and their anxiety about it, and how does it usually show up? Like, I was wondering, do you work with somebody on back pain, and then they're like, okay, there's something else that's going on? Like, could this be related?
I mean, a lot of patients that I've seen don't even know that I do the pain thing because they're like referred from like one of my friends or a friend of a patient. And
oh, really?
So, yeah.
Huh.
It's probably only like 50-50 now.
Oh.
I mean, I'm only seeing like 4 patients right now, so that doesn't say anything.
Okay.
But historically, I've seen a lot of like non-pain patients. But yeah, generally speaking, people who have pain are more likely to have anxiety also because it's just a different way of the brain interpreting danger. And people who have pain or anxiety might be more likely to have ED because likewise, it's like the brain just interpreting danger. So I think, the most important thing I can say is you want to just kind of like lower the stakes. I know it's hard because you're like, this is so important. How could I lower the stakes? But the irony is, like, when the stakes are really high, it makes it hard to be successful. And when you're able to get back to that joy, that lightness, that ease, that effortlessness that you used to have, that's when your body and your brain are able to be in that state that primes you for success. And then once you start getting those corrective experiences, I actually enjoyed this experience, And at a certain point, there's less fear, there's less preoccupation, there's less hopelessness. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. And from there, it's just kind of like an upward spiral.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. What's going on for Alan Gordon and the Pain Psychology Center?
Well, we just finished this huge pain study out in Boulder, chronic back pain, where, we did this treatment versus a control group, and everyone got fMRIs of their brains before and after. And that should be coming out sometime in the next year. And we're going to be writing a book talking about all of this treatment and everything that's going to be specific on pain. We're still trying to come up with a title for the book. And, one of my co-authors' friends wrote a book on depression called The Upward Spiral, and I was like, that's the best name for a book ever. So, if you have any ideas for the name of a book,
How about ouch?
we want to focus on the solution, not the problem.
Okay.
That's good though. I like that.
I'll get back to you. All right.
That is definitely like attention grabbing.
Right.
So we're writing that book, and all of this stuff should be coming out in the early part of 2020, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And we find you at painpsychologycenter.com.
Painpsychologycenter.com, yeah.
Okay, and any other social media plugs or anything like that? Or that's pretty much the website?
Yes, there are other social media things, but I never check them, so I don't even know what their handles are.
Okay. And there's a big presence on this land called TMS Wiki.
Yes, we have a pain recovery program on TMS, T like Tom, M like Mary, S like Samantha, wiki. That is like a 21-day program on how to overcome pain.
And I bet a lot of that stuff, I haven't looked at in a minute, but a lot of that stuff would apply to this.
It really does. I
Yeah.
mean, the Steve Sachs story is on there. The Rocky the Rescue Dog story is on there. I really borrowed a lot.
All right.
From the recovery program, but it's all the same application. It's like lowering the stakes, regulating your anxiety, getting corrective experiences, things like that.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah, that was fun.
Thanks to the show's executive producer, Robin Morrison. Thanks to Kat Murphy, director of social media. Thanks to Team Scrub for the music. Thanks to the sound engineer, Ravi Carmen. Thanks to Brian Hui for naming the show. Thanks to Alex Pitts for the intro. Thanks to Arlene Asuncion for the logo. You can find this podcast at hardconversationspodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. You can locate me on Twitter at Tim Norton LCSW or on my website for my private practice, timnortontherapy.com. You can also email us at hardconversationspodcast@gmail.com or call into our hotline at 662-626-4276. That's 662-MAN-HARD. Thanks to all my friends and family for brainstorming this show with me. Shoutouts to the sex positive community, including sex educators, sex therapists, sex coaches, other fellow sex podcasters, sex surrogates, academics, the sexual health medical community, sex workers, the tantric community, and everybody else involved with having hard conversations. Bye-bye.